Welcome back to another edition of the Financial Game Plan with Kirk and Trevor Bergen of Bergen Financial Group. You can reach out to them at 830-224-0844. That's 830-224-0844. This is where retirement isn't left just to guesswork. It's mapped out play by play to help make you a part of the family. It's all about getting a strategy together that fits your lifestyle and maintaining your lifestyle. So without further ado, I'm going to stop running my mouth and we're going to talk to the more important people here on the show, Kirk and Trevor Bergen. Kirk, Trevor, how are you today, guys?
Doing great, John.
How are you doing?
Wonderful. You know, I always look forward to coming on here with you guys because, truth be told, okay, let's pull the curtain back. For longtime listeners, we thank you guys for joining us here. Wherever you get your podcast, we thank you guys for following us. But longtime listeners on here, there was a comment made on there that I won't make reference of. But the true boss behind Bergen Financial jumped on and told us that we had to take out a segment about staying at the house that had to be edited out very quickly. So I always look forward to coming and joining you guys on here because I always have fun with all of the family that comes on here and joins us each and every time that we get on here. So let's dive into a headline that I saw. Kirk, I don't know if you remember, what were some of Trevor's favorite toys from back in the day? Because I saw an article that said Lego is outperforming the stock market. And I always wondered, when you have people that come into you with that strange investment, we saw it, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, we went through all of that, where they come in with these hot investment tips, these novelty ideas, but it is not an actual retirement plan. What advice do you have for them?
You know, it's funny that you mentioned Lego. I think you said, Lego there. And we have a client. This happened just a couple of weeks ago. We have a client down in the Corpus Christi area. Won't mention the name, who we were at their home. And I have never seen so many Legos in one location in my life. And this gentleman, as a retiree now, a fairly new retiree, he's taken up Legos and he puts these massive Lego projects together, and he's already purchasing new ones for the, he's he doesn't just have one or two more waiting in the wings. Trevor, how many do you think?
Gosh, he's like remodeling his house to house his Legos. And the funny story about that was like, how did you get into Legos? He's like, well, my grandson told me to do this Lego with him. And he was like, grown men like me don't do Legos. That's for little kids. And he did one and he was hooked. And ever since then, he's been doing Legos every single day. Gosh, I asked him the other day, I think he has got like $10,000+ worth of Legos still in boxes that he hasn't even taken out of the box yet. But his Lego collection's pretty impressive. He has this massive Titanic that he did. And I can't even guess on how many pieces it was, but it was a ton. But what was really cool about it, we kind of dove deeper into the whole Lego thing, but these Legos, they actually work, right? He has like a Maserati that you can actually use as a remote control on your phone and drive this Maserati from your phone, and it's Legos that you put together. The inner workings of the engines and the pistons and all that, it's pretty incredible. So it's funny that you mentioned Legos because we just ran into this the other day and we're talking about how Legos have become a really, really big thing here recently.
But as far as your question about, folks that come in and say, I've got this amazing Lego collection. I've created all these Lego projects that I want to sell, and they're worth a lot of money, and I'm going to be able to use this as my retirement plan. We get that. We get of course, the baseball card collections. We get the sports memorabilia collections, and I had one here a couple of years ago. The guy had a very large rock and roll memorabilia collection that he had planned on using that to sell to generate income in retirement. The problem with that is, there's a lot of problems with that, but one of them is liquidity. When you're talking about things like that, novelty items or Legos or whatever it is, you have to have a buyer. You're going to sell those Legos or those card collections on a secondary market. It's going to be, on eBay, or it's going to be at one of these card shows, or it's very difficult to create a plan, a stable plan, a predictable, consistent plan that's going to generate a consistent flow of income that you're going to need in retirement from something like that. So, that's what I would say about that. You need a professional portfolio that's put together, that's created with liquidity in mind, with purpose in mind, the ability to generate the level of income that's necessary. There's just so many different factors that are involved when it comes to creating a retirement plan. And and the types of investments that need to be used for that. You mentioned crypto. We've seen crypto. Crypto really went through the moon, and then it just fell off the cliff, earlier this year. And so folks that were just banking everything on crypto, that's a risky deal. That's a risky investment, a very speculative investment. And I'm not anti-crypto at all. I'm just saying that, there's more stable and more predictable asset allocations that can be put together that can generate a more predictable income. We also have financial products that we use that protect against downside, that act as hedges. They give more stability, a more firm foundation with regard to taking income from those assets. Because, the worst thing that you can do, John, is take a consistent, systematic income in retirement to fund your retirement from an asset that is shrinking, that is declining in value. That's kind of like reverse dollar cost averaging. You don't want to do that. That is something that's going to exacerbate the decline or the drawdown in your retirement assets. So, there's just a lot of folks out there that have different ideas, but that's part of the process when we meet with folks is trying to help them understand what's realistic and what's not.
And I don't think it's really necessarily a bad thing to have those, right? Have collectible Legos,
not at all.
Collectible baseball cards. I think that's a really neat thing, but we want to make sure it's in proportionate to the rest of your assets, right? We don't want to be taking a third of our assets and tying it up into some baseball card that we bought for $100,000. That's going to take the perfect buyer to buy it, to flip it to get $200,000. We could be sitting on that card for a long, long time, right? It's not liquid, like my dad was saying. It's very important to look at the overall picture and have someone that's a professional look at the overall picture and ask those tough questions. Hey, what happens if we do have some emergency come up and we need $200,000? Where are we going to take that from? Ripping it out of an IRA may cost you, like we've talked about on previous podcasts, tons and tons of money in taxes. It could throw up different, your IRMAA prices down the road, your Medicare prices down the road. So we don't want to put all of our liquid assets into one thing that may not work out the way we want it to. But if it's a small portion of your overall assets, then, definitely let's do it. Let's try it. But we want to make sure we're being smart about it.
I always hear in retirement, it's healthy to have a hobby. And I can't remember what comedian I heard say it, but he said, I'm comfortable in giving people 10% of what they ask for. If I have a family member that comes to me and asks for $2,000, I'm comfortable doing $200 because I'm okay in losing it and not getting it back, basically. It's good to have a hobby in retirement. It's good to stay busy.
It's great.
You don't want to fund your retirement with your hobby, unless you're Jay Leno, and then that's a different conversation altogether. But you want to have something that's there to keep yourself busy, keep your mind occupied, have a little fun in retirement that goes with it. That's great. That's healthy.
Absolutely.
But you can't fund a retirement off of a hobby, and you can't fund a retirement off of hope. So what you want to do is sit down, talk to someone, because here's the fact of the matter is, we all know it. Money can be emotional. When you have a bunch of it, you're fine. You move along. When you don't have any, how do you feel? You're angry. You're sad. You want to sit down and talk to someone that they can give you a plan that can go with just that. But now here's the thing, Kirk. One of the things that I've seen, I've read articles about people who they jumped into things like this, and what they were trying to do is use it as a catch-up. Use it as their way because they felt like, you know what, in my 20s, I didn't have any money. In my 30s, I was trying to establish life. By my 40s, I was living life, family, whatever. So now here I am, late 50s, early 60s, and I'm trying to catch up for retirement, and they're trying to think of that as their plan for retirement. How can they do that, and is that a good idea to use it just as a way to start their catch-up?
Well, again, the situation is the boss there a little bit, but, I don't think it's a good idea to put your entire faith of your retirement on building Legos and things of that nature. It's not a very realistic idea that will work. What we tell folks that have started late in saving money for retirement, it's never too late to start. You may not end up with as much as you would have if you would have started 20 years before, but going ahead and getting going, doing the best you can. A lot of folks are choosing to, because they want to, and some out of necessity, to continue to work longer and to not retire at 55 or 60, and quite frankly, when I think about it, John, when I think about our clients, and we have several hundred client families that we work with across the country, the retirees that have purpose in the retirement, that could come in the form of a part-time job, could come in the form of a hobby, but something that gives them purpose, that gives them an outlet, not just watching television and not just, doing the same old thing every day, but something that gives them a reason to get up in the morning to get excited about that. Those are the folks that are the happiest. A lot of times, and the statistics show this, a lot of folks that retire that first year or so may be okay. But once they get into that second year, sometimes it can become depressing to some folks because it's not what they'd envisioned. So having someone who's done this over and over again in the counseling sessions that we've done with folks who are entering retirement, we've had the benefit of talking to a lot of people over the years and getting a lot of feedback from them after they retire and what makes folks happy. Not everybody's the same, but I always talk to people about having some purpose, having something that gets you excited about get up in the morning when you're retired. And if that means working a part-time job, maybe you're not going to work in that career that you worked in all those years. But, I have folks that gone back to work at Home Depot or whatever, or, and they're social people. They want to be around other people, and it brings happiness. So, some of those folks that are doing that type of thing, they can still participate in a 401k. They might be 65 years old, 70 years old, or older. They can still participate in a 401k. They can still put money aside for the future.
So it's about doing what you want to do, not what you have to do at that point in time, because that's the end goal. You spent all of your life working. You've done all of that to set everything up, to put everything in play. But then at that point in time, when you're ready to get to that retired portion, you want to sit down and be able to do all the things that you want to do. Not if you have to go back to work, it happens. But if you have to go back or you decide to go back, it's your choice. The way that you want to go back, whether it be a consultant, whether it be at Walmart, whatever the different range may be, it might be just that. But you were talking about a 401k, and we've talked about 401ks on here quite often. And so many people, they go into autopilot with a 401k. They just put into it and give and forget about it. And then they change jobs, particularly when they're younger. You see people jump from job to job to job, and they forget about that old 401k. Trevor, when you meet someone that either they're serious about retirement, they're in retirement, hey, and I've changed jobs over the years, how do you help them get all of those things together, corral them back together, all those 401ks and all those different accounts? And how do you explain to them that while you have all of this there, there's still a strategy behind all of it?
We see that more often than you would think, where, we have a retiree, they're about to retire and they have 3 different 401ks, and one 401k was from 10, 15 years ago. There can be a risk in that because you don't have someone looking out for you. You have this 401k company, you're not logging in there to see it every day. You know that you had it invested a certain way, but that way 20 years ago is probably not the best position to be in, if we're in our 60s. And you could look up seeing that you had $500,000 sitting there one year, and next thing you know, 3 or 4 months later, we've had a big correction in the market, and now it's worth $400,000, and that can really put a damper on your future plans. So I think it is very important to try to consolidate all your 401ks if possible, and have someone looking out after them for you, being able to come up with different strategies for the future. It also opens up so many different options when they're not in a 401k. 401ks typically are a little bit limited on what you can do, the certain funds you can pick, how often you can move in and out of those funds. So having someone look after these funds for you, have them all in one place, and having a financial advisor that's really caring about you, that allows them to give you recommendations on different strategies going forward. We've talked about healthcare quite a bit, different ways to put money in different buckets for different parts of our retirement, and setting that up properly. The best way we can do that is to be able to see everything in one spot.
So, Kirk, when someone comes in, they're bringing all their information, and they're just transparent. This is the person that I'm going to equate it to. When was the last time you went to the doctor person? Oh, well, the Clinton administration was the last time I actually did an x-ray on all of my files. When they go through, what kind of shock does it offer to them that everything that you found that's there, it can change from what their thoughts may be, because ultimately digging in deeper, having someone dig into their fees, dig into everything that's there, can put them in a different position than what they actually thought they might have been in.
That happens a lot, John. That happens a lot. Folks have a misunderstanding about what they have. They don't understand where they're invested. They don't understand the types of funds they're invested in, the growth potential in those particular funds, the level of risk in those potential funds. I'll give you an example. We had a client come in here recently who knew he was going to be retiring in the next year. He didn't have an advisor. He only had a 401k representative that he'd call in and get somebody different every time. That's not really good advice. I mean, he didn't have a trusted advisor that he could work with before he met us. He was invested far, far too aggressively, given his age, given his proximity to retirement. And Trevor can help me with this, but this particular person who ended up becoming a client saw his value in his 401k in the immediate month or 2, 3 months or so prior to him actually retiring, saw that value of that 401k decrease. Trevor, help me with that. Was it
$100,000 in that?
Well over $100,000 just in the last couple months.
And right. And he had invested like he should have had invested when he was, 45, but now he's 65 and we have a big correction in the market. And this was early last year when the market was going down for a little while. When he had looked at his, those 401ks, you get statements once a quarter. And I think he had looked at his statement from the prior year. And then now it's March 31st. And he's looking at a statement and it's just drastically lower. And that really put a concern on his face, realizing, hey, I just lost all this money because I didn't have someone looking out after me. And then on the flip side of that, we've had, people my age that are in their 30s that have been working at a company for 10 years and they've been investing into this 401k. And, when they set up the 401k, they didn't care to look at it. They knew it was for the future. They picked a couple funds. Well, come to find out, they were in the most conservative funds you could possibly be in. And they were earning, 1.5% a year. And then you look at it and you're like, man, you could have so much more money if you had someone that was helping you look at this. And 401ks, we obviously can't invest for them, but we do it all the time. We help our clients sit down, look at their 401k, look at their options, look at what they have available to them to put them in the right spot for their situation.
I think so many people don't realize that, when you hear 401k, and unfortunately it's just what we're taught, and that's what you guys are trying to do is educate. 401k is just a tax code. It's an IRS code that's out there that it just makes it for common knowledge. They didn't put a pretty name on it as purple tulips. They actually just put the tax code out there in front of us. So it's educating people, explaining to them what they have there, and it's that ongoing education that keeps going on. If you're working and you're putting in a 401k, great. You can go and ask your HR administrator, your 401k administrator. 9 times out of 10, they don't know either. Let's just be honest.
No, they don't.
But you want to sit down and you want to talk to some people that will give you that education, that will help you out, get you the information that you need to get you to your future, to get you to the goal that you've been working on. Reach out to the family, give them a call, 830-224-0844. That's 830-224-0844. Let's do this. I want to help out some people because, like we said, not a lot of people know what a 401k is. And we use a lot of phrases and words on here that we use some jargon that might just be confusing some people. So let's explain it to them. Just let's put it in layman's terms if you guys are okay with that. Like one of the ones they might even hear when they come in and say, hey, you know what? You need to take out your RMDs. Kirk, what are RMDs?
Required minimum distributions. And there's lots of different rules that dictate when required minimum distributions are to be taken, depending on what the year of your birth is. If you're born prior to 1960, the current RMD rule is that you have to begin taking out your required distribution in the year that you turn age 73. If you're born in 1960 or after, the year that you turn age 75 now is the age that you're required to start taking RMDs. There's also RMDs that are part of inherited IRAs as well. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. We got a call at the office today from someone who found out that his brother had left him some money through a qualified pension plan. And so he's going to inherit this qualified retirement plan. He's going to need to put it into an inherited IRA. And he's asking about, he didn't know anything about what was coming. And so we visited with him. Trevor actually talked to him and explained to him that he's going to have what's called an inherited IRA that is going to require minimum distributions taken out of that inherited IRA over the next 10 years. And so there's lots of different rules that are part of the RMD process. We do all the calculations for all of our clients. We have pages and pages of clients that are RMD age or have inherited IRAs that we go through. We do the calculation. We educate them about when they have to take RMDs, how much the RMDs are every year. We do the calculation. We let them know how much that is. What's the best way to do that? Should they take it out monthly over the course of a year? Should they take it out at the beginning of the year or the end of the year? There's lots of conversation that takes place, and there's not a one size fit all answer to that or solution to that. It just really depends on the client. And so it's important when it comes to RMDs to have a good education and understanding about what they are, when they're required, how much you have to take out, and so on and so forth. Because, John, if you don't take the RMD out or you don't take enough out, it's a 25% penalty from the IRS. It's heavy duty. It used to be 50%. They've lowered it to 25 now.
How kind of them.
Yeah, how kind of them. I believe
and
it's
then they make you take it and tax you on it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
That's exactly right. And so there's a lot of folks that don't know anything about RMDs. We had a meeting yesterday with some folks up in Fort Worth, Texas, a virtual meeting. And these folks are now retirement age. They're in their mid 60s and they didn't know anything about RMDs. They kind of heard of it, but didn't know what it was. And so we started going through this process and educating them about what RMDs are, because even though it's still a ways off for them, it's important to understand that it's coming. And there's some planning that can take place with regard to how we're going to set that up and the order in which they're going to take income down the road. There's a smart way to do it and a not smart way to do it. And there's no getting around RMDs. RMDs are going to be a big part of their life. So Roth conversion strategies, things of that nature. Roths don't have RMDs. Traditional IRAs do. 401ks do. Other qualified pension plans do. Unless it's an inherited Roth. An inherited Roth does have an RMD, but it's not taxable. And there's certain rules that dictate what you do there as well. So, we do this for a living. We study the rules. We study the changes that come about through Congress. And it's our job as fiduciaries to understand those rules and to be able to communicate that to our clients so that they have the confidence to know that they're doing what they need to be doing and they're in compliance with the IRS.
All right, Trevor, your turn. Portfolio diversification. Because there are a lot of people, I think, run into this misconception that, well, I got money with Fidelity, and I got money over in SoFa. I'm diversified.
Right. And that's funny that you say that, because it happens quite a bit where they come to us and they exactly what you said. Hey, I want to be diversified, so I put money with all these different places. And Fidelity brokerage account, I have a Charles Schwab brokerage account, I have a Merrill Lynch brokerage account, and then we look at all their statements and they're invested in all the same type of stuff, right? It might be slightly different, but ultimately it's all in the same sector, the same, they're all in different funds that are very heavy in maybe the S&P 500. So they're not really diversified. Yes, they have money in different places, but it's all invested in the same type of investments, right? That's definitely a misconception. We can be very diversified in what we do, having all the funds under one house. And diversification doesn't necessarily mean spreading it among 200 different stocks, right? There's different strategies that are involved. Some may not even be in the stock market that can provide you great returns and great protection against market risk, things like that we like to use inside these portfolios that may not all be strictly in the stock market. The stock market can have, in some people's eyes, they fear the stock market. They don't want to be in the stock market. They hear about losses. They hear about 2008. They hear about the .com burst, right? And they don't want to lose their money. And that's definitely a credible thing. But being able to be diversified in different strategies and different types of investment accounts is very important.
Let's go with another one. One more for you, Kirk. Sequence of return risk.
That's a great one. And you know what? That's one that almost every single client that we bring this up to, and we try to do that with every single person, their previous financial advisor never talked to them about it. Sequence of return risk has to do with the order in which the returns in your investment portfolio come right after you retire. If you have multiple years in a row, and it can happen. It certainly happened in 2000, 2001, 2002 as an example, where we had 3 negative years in a row, and you just retired, particularly, it damages you the most. You're just behind the 8 ball right off the bat, and it's so difficult to recover from that. And so, you maybe have heard this before, John, but if you have $100 and you lose 50% value, you're down at $50, right? Mm-hmm. But in order to get back to that original $100, you have to make 100% on $50 to get back to $100, right?
Correct.
And so that concept is one that we talk to with our clients about, and we illustrate it for them. we show them how volatility range as it relates to sequence of return risk is very, very important consideration. You can, if you have too much volatility in your portfolio, and so therefore you're subject to having declines in value while you're taking withdrawals, you can really do damage to your portfolio and the longevity of your retirement portfolio. So we talk to them about that. We show them how protecting a lot of those assets from any downside creates efficiency. It creates a smaller volatility range. And in effect, what it can do is it can cause their money to last longer, to have more longevity, because we don't know when the market's going to go up and we don't know when it's going to go down. Nobody has a crystal ball. And so taking away that sequence of return risk has a lot to do with the way the money is managed, the way the allocation is set up. We make sure we have an element there that is protected against downside. And further, John, what we try to do is when we build out a systematic income stream in a client portfolio, we try to construct that in such a way that when the income is coming out, it's coming from a part of the portfolio that is not subject to decline.
Okay.
A part of that portfolio that has a firm foundation, so that it allows the part of the portfolio that does ebb and flow the ability to do its ebb and flow and over time grow. Right. So that's a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, but sequence of return risk is a big one, and we try to illustrate that to clients. We try to educate them about what that is and how important it is to understand that you can have too much risk in a portfolio, particularly early on. It's not a good idea to take the risk of having multiple years in a row that you have decline in value, because it can really hurt you.
All right, Trevor, one more for you. Who's this lady named Irma? And what does she have to do with my retirement? My wife's not named Irma.
Yeah, so IRMAA is a great thing, and it's very important, right? And IRMAA, that's going to come in play with Medicare premiums. And IRMAA stands for Income Related Monthly Adjustment. And how that works is, depending on what your modified adjusted gross income is 2 years prior to you starting Medicare, it can affect your Medicare premiums. There's this big misconception out there that Medicare, you pay your Part B, it's standard for everyone. It's $202.90, for example, for 2026. But there is income brackets, just kind of like the tax bracket. If you make too much money, then all of a sudden your IRMAA prices go up, your Medicare premiums go up for your Part B. That doesn't include what your Medicare supplemental costs might cost you, or your drug plan, or even your Advantage plan down the road. So we've talked a lot about some different things on this podcast. My dad was talking about inherited IRAs earlier. If you inherit an IRA and you're age 60 and you have to withdraw all this money within a 10-year period, maybe you inherit quite a large sum of money, maybe $1 million. Well, we have to be strategic on how we're going to take that $1 million out. We don't want to wait 2 or 3 years to start really taking that money out, because next thing we know, this is really crazy stat that I looked at the other day. If you're single, say you inherited this IRA, and this is a true story. We had a lady that this happened to, and she had not been taking her IRA distributions regularly to liquidate this IRA in 10 years. And she's about to retire. She's about to have to start paying for Medicare. I was like, well, how much do you have? And she had a large sum of money, right? And next thing you know, I was looking at it, and I was like, even if we were to liquidate this over the next 6 years is what she had remaining, we're going to have to take out about $200,000 a year just to liquidate this entire account, right? Well, guess what that does? Say she's making $50,000 in retirement. That extra $200,000 a year is going to bump her up into the fourth highest IRMAA price bracket.
Ooh.
And that takes her Medicare premiums from $202.90 a month all the way up to $649.20 a month. That's pretty wild to think about. So like we were talking about earlier, having to find, and you know what she told me? She said, my current financial advisors never told me about that. All they told me was, hey, we'll withhold 22% or 24% from, these distributions. So that will go to the IRS. But she never talked to them, or that advisor had never talked to her about what that effect's going to have on her Medicare premiums down the road. So IRMAA, again, that's how they base your Medicare premiums down the road.
Look, when you go see your advisor, if you currently have one, or even when you go in and see the Bergens, you're going to get an education, because they're just like anything that's out there. You go to the car repair shop and they tell you need a new transmission or you need a new flux capacitor. You kind of have to take their word that they know what they're talking about. But here's the beauty of it. When you go and see the Bergens, they're going to give you an education, an explanation through the conversation. I know it sounds like a lot of rhyming words there, but it really is just that conversation, just like we're sitting here now, having a conversation, talking, they're going to get to know you and explain everything that's going on. Because here, let's go with some facts on some things. Multiple accounts is not a retirement strategy. As we talked about earlier, diversification is not having money at different financial houses. It's having a plan for everything that's there to deal with our favorite uncle, Uncle Sam, and a plan to go there. A plan to go with a healthcare plan as we get older to still go to the doctor and have everything there. Having an estate planning plan for a legacy plan, that having that generational wealth passed on to your kids, or whether it just be a charitable donation to your favorite charity. Having all of that taken care of, all the while having someone that can help you through the entire process. Holding your hand through the entire process, explaining to you everything that's going on. So you have that set up. So all you're doing is sitting there with your strategy, going through living the retirement plan that you want. You want to sit down. You want to get a game plan in place. Reach out to the Bergen, join the family, become a part of the family. 830-224-0844. That's 830-224-0844. Guys, as always, I enjoy getting on here, having a conversation with you guys, joking with you guys, and just sharing all this information with everyone that's out there listening. Trevor, as always, I'd like to give you the final word today, sir.
Yeah, I think we really appreciate you, John. It's been a great time. I really think that, having that plan in place, knowing where your assets are is something that's very important, and we'd love to help you.
Investment advisory services offered through J.W. Cole Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor firm. Registration is not an endorsement by securities regulators. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance products, including annuities, offered through Trevor Bergen, NPN number 210-46585. The firms are separate entities. Annuity guarantees rely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and are not offered by J.W. Cole Advisors, Inc. Read your contract for restrictions, limitations, or penalties. Bergen Financial Group is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Bergen Financial Group is licensed in your state, please call 830-224-0844.